Hong Kong scientist develops retinal scan technology to identify early childhood autism. A Hong Kong scientist has developed a method to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to scan retinas of children as young as 6 to detect early autism or the risk of autism, and hopes to develop a commercial product this year. I'm Steven from Tostemac, and welcome to the Tostemac Autism News, where we cover the latest news involving autism. Today's article takes us to Hong Kong, China, where a professor by the name of Benny Zee has developed a new method to find early signs of autism. That method being scanning the individual's eyeballs or retinas. Yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest. When I think about signs of autism, looking into the eyeballs wasn't exactly the first thing that came to mind. After all, when we're thinking about giving someone an autism diagnosis and testing them for it, we usually look at the social skills because that's where autistics tend to struggle the most, myself included. However, as I was reading this, I became more and more intrigued by this process. Here, let me read how they explain this article, and I'll leave a link to the article in the description down below. His method uses a high-resolution camera with new computer software, which analyzes a combination of factors including fiber layers and blood vessels in the eye. The technology can be used to identify children at risk of autism and get them into treatment programs sooner, said Zee. 70 children were tested using the technology, 46 with autism, and a control group of 24. The technology was able to identify the children with autism 95.7% of the time. The average age tested was 13, with the youngest being 6. Zee's findings have been published in eClinical Medicine, a peer-reviewed medical journal. Now, as vague as this sounds, because there's not really too much details in this article, this doesn't really sound too far-fetched to me, or at least not as far-fetched as trying to find signs of autism in the teeth. And yes, I'm being oddly specific on that one. I feel like this might actually have some merit to it. I mean, according to this, they're finding some success in this method. So I'm beginning to wonder, could they be onto something? Sounds like we might need the opinion from a medical expert. Hey Mom, how's it going?
Hi sweetheart, how are ya?
Doing good. So for those that are new to the channel and have never seen her, this is Miss Ellen McAllister. She's a well-known nursing expert and an expert in autism as well. She's also my mom.
Hi everyone.
Alright, so now let's go ahead and get right to it. Now, you've read the article too, right?
Yes, I have.
So the first question is, what were your initial thoughts as you were reading this news?
Well, to be honest, Stephen, guys, I was very, very excited. You know, as a parent of 2 children on the spectrum, you know, you're always looking for something, some sort of a tell on what is going on with your baby, and to make sure that you discover it early enough and give whatever therapies you need to help this individual to develop.
Right, because the earlier you get the diagnosis, the sooner you can get like the therapies or treatment or whatever.
Absolutely, and the idea that maybe having an eye test looking into the eye is going to show us some things that lets us know. You know, there's a lot of parents out there, you know, when I had Steven, we didn't know anything. Most people didn't. And so we had to go through a bumpy road to get to where we are today. But by the time I had the next child, we had a little bit more familiarity, but we still didn't have a lot of information, and there were more questions than there were answers. So if this mechanism is going to be accurate, I'm sure a lot of parents with their first child on the spectrum looking and thinking, well, do I want to take a chance to have another child? You know, this would be very, very helpful. So I am excited about it.
Now, with this eye test, it does seem a little bit unusual because usually when we diagnose autism, we're looking at the social factors, not like the physical traits.
Correct.
But there is some recent research showing that there may be some physical or even environmental elements involving autism, right?
Well, and that's something that actually has been through the years. I mean, so that's not in and of itself new.
Okay.
The thing about this test that's rather unique is that, as you said, we had to wait for behaviors, and that's why, guys, boys actually will get diagnosed much sooner than girls, and it's because of the way the girls and the boys develop as they're growing up.
But with this eye test, it could be a different story.
It will level the playing field, absolutely, because now we're not depending upon how your brains are developing, who's more mechanical, who's more social. What we're actually going to do is we're going to have concrete things to look at. We already know that in the brains of individuals on the spectrum, that in the pons and the medulla, in the back area of the brain, we do know that there are some differences that we're consistently seeing. Along the DNA chain, we already know there are some differences, but these are things that you have to go through very extreme testing to get there, and most often families who are dealing with children on the spectrum, they don't have those resources.
Not to mention they would usually cost a lot of money.
Those are part of the resources that I'm talking about. So if it's something where the doctor can learn and look in the eye and see some difference that can kind of clue them, that really is an exciting development.
All right. Now, as for the last question, since this article was very short, what more information would you like to see moving forward? Because I would imagine there's some people out there that would like a bit more detail about this procedure or method, or what they're looking for, really.
Well, actually, the article is discussing one very limited study that was done. And for those of us in the nursing or medical professional, we already know, and also in the developmental disabilities area, that you need more than 60 people to test on this.
I think it was around 70.
70, okay. Yeah. Even that is such a small statistical number that it's actually a very skewed number. So this is something that's going to have to be done over and over again. You need more people to participate in it. Your control group needs to be bigger. So this is a very exciting development. It's a start, but I'd like to see many more tests along this line, and I'd like to see it done by other individuals. You know, one of the things that we always say, both in nursing and special needs, trust but verify, and we need more work on that.
Well, not to say anything bad about the professor,
no,
like he's the one that came up with the idea.
I'm very excited about it, Stephen, but what I'm saying is his cannot be the one and only. You know, in science, anytime you do an experiment, someone has to be able to duplicate that experiment and get the same results in order for your findings to be validated. What I'm simply stating here is the doctor who did this test,
Mr. Benny Zee.
Mr. Benny Zee, kudos to you, sir. I'm really glad you did that. But you know what? If you're a scientist, you already know someone has to be able to come behind you, duplicate the study, expand on the study, and then publish.
Right, so Benny Zee's doing a great job with this, and we just want to see more people do it also. Now, what I would like to see personally is kind of like a compare and contrast. I want to see a comparison of a neurotypical set of eyes, maybe several of them, and then an equal amount of autistics and their sets of eyes. That way we could do a bit of compare and contrast between those two sets and see what differences there are. But another thing I'd like to see is what's going on between the brain and the eyes in terms of brain activity, because one of the reasons that autistics have trouble with eye contact is because there's a lot of focus and a lot of stress towards focusing on one or two objects, whereas a neurotypical may not have that struggle. So that's the kind of stuff I would like to see, because I think that'll paint a more clearer picture as to whether or not a boy or a girl has autism.
Yes, and I agree with Stephen on that wholeheartedly. There do need to be more people involved, and you do need to have very tight specifics, you know, the criteria. What are you looking for? What are you expecting? What characteristic is being attributed to, say, the male on the spectrum versus the male not on the spectrum, the female on the spectrum versus the female not on the spectrum? Also, is there a difference in the age of the participant, the person who's being tested? So there's a lot more questions to be answered. I do look forward to seeing more developments on this. I think it does have a lot of hope, and I'm sure a lot of parents in the future will be looking forward to find out the results.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming to talk about this news.
As always, it's a pleasure, Stephen, and thank you for sharing this information. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, keep tuned. He's on it.
Yep. All right. Now back to the studio.
Ciao.
Later. And there you have it, the latest news on this new method, as well as me and my mom's opinion. I hope you enjoyed this video, but what do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Maybe you think they're onto something, or perhaps they should be looking elsewhere. Let us know in the comments section below, and let's start a conversation here. And on that note, it's time to end the video. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Tostemac to stay up to date on our latest videos. And until the next one, see you later.